All right, thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Nanbo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OpenGrid. So OpenGrid is on a mission to make EV fast charging as easy as grocery shopping. In 2025, we'll likely see a tipping point in EV adoption because it will cost the same as gas-powered cars. This will push EVs to represent 35% of all car sales in the US market in this decade. But developing fast charging stations remains the biggest hurdle to EV adoption because 40 million renters and a quarter of all car drivers rely on scarce public charging. Why is it so challenging to build public fast charging stations, given the background of our audience and our judges? I don't have to bore you with details, but we all know it's because of high construction costs, grid limitations, and extremely time-consuming processes. At OpenGrid, we deeply understand EV drivers' demand firsthand. They prefer middle-speed fast charging in convenient places and get at least 50% charged during the visit. They also only want to charge once or twice every week, similar to filling up gas. So to overcome deployment challenges and exceed EV driver expectations, we have developed a proprietary ODIN-1 fast charger with its built-in 36 kilowatt hours of energy storage. The fast charger is deployable regardless of power constraints and can still deliver a consistent 50 kilowatts in charging speed. The best part, it installs in a single day and can cut costs by over 70%. Our go-to-market is a simple two-step process. First, we offer a low-cost, hassle-free term sheet for commercial real estate with grocery anchor locations, making adding EV fast chargers as easy as adding ATMs. We then partner with grocery stores to become the vendor so they can sell the energy at checkout along with other grocery items while making a nice profit. EV drivers pay to charge. That's how we recover the investment. Under real-world assumptions, we estimate a 5,000 charger deployment would bring a revenue of over $160 million in the US market. If you're curious about how we arrive at $32,000 per charger per year, we have a detailed unit economics slide later in the deck that talks about that. In terms of traction, we have signed deployment contract with grocery anchor locations in Virginia, have piloted our full functional prototype in Detroit. So we are ready to make revenue. And we have also seen very positive reactions from not only the grocery stores, but also EV drivers about our offering because we have provided them with exactly what they needed to transition to an EV-powered future. Where do ourselves in the EV charging landscape? We're not competing with Tesla or EVgo on fast charging because they have their own merit. They can provide the fastest charging possible for EV drivers. We're not looking to replace some of these level 2 chargers because they work well in offices and apartments. We are really completing the EV charging landscape in places where the wait time is expected to be short, but fast charging is prohibitive because of grid or space constraints. Let's talk about numbers. We all know profitability has troubled many incumbents, but thanks to our cost-effective setup and our ability to deliver electrons faster under moderate 5.8 sessions per day, we can generate a revenue of $32,000 per charger per year. And that translates into an annualized ROI of 15% and IRR of over 40%, indicating our ability to generate returns quickly. As a startup, we are backed by a top-tier team of hardware and software engineers, and we are passionate operators with the finance, cash flow, and product knowledge needed to build a large-scale public charge network. Lastly, here are some photos from our pilot and our community. We are passionate operators. We love our EVs and their drivers. And we're looking for more opportunity to do more deployment and pilots in different states like the one we did in Detroit. So who's here ready to help us reach more drivers nationwide? Thank you so much.
Hello?
Yep,
okay.
There you
go. Thanks for the nice presentation. Curious about how you're going to manage the back-end operations, right? Everything is battery powered, right? So how do you plan to manage the shift out of the batteries of your stations and essentially manage the OpEx while everyone else has a platform that's plugged into the grid?
Yeah, so the charging station is going to be plugged into the grid, coming from 208 three-phase standard power supply. And we're not going to swap the batteries. So the battery is going to be plugged into the grid and getting trigger charge constantly through the grid. And for customers, we can configure the charging speed and the time cap we place on each driver, which is something they are very used to. So for example, we can provide 40 kilowatts in charging speed and give each driver 45 minutes as a time cap, so they can get 30 kilowatt hours of energy within that 45 minutes window. And we could do up to 3 cycles like this one. And the average charging station on fast charging stations is only 30 kilowatt hours. So we are going to mirror that into our application. And if that's not enough, our standard offer is to offer 2 chargers as a set for one location. And that's going to help us recycle the battery faster and also meet the EV drivers' demand.
Great. So it's a trickle charge on a battery, so it's still a grid connection, so you don't lose the advantage of the installation timeline. You still have that 18 to 24-month interconnection utility connection. What are the advantages of being a battery-based backup? And then second question to that is, what is your payback period on a 1 unit?
Yeah. So great question. So actually, it's going to take advantage of the permitting process because we don't need to get a transformer. We can run our application just from their existing transformer because we only need 15 kilowatts from the transformer, which is essentially available in most places we visit. So because of that, we can just apply to a very simple construction permit, have engineers draw the drawings and submit the drawings to the local permit office and get permit that way, so we can start our construction in a timely fashion. And your second question is, payback period is going to be under 3 years, and our standard contract is we offer a 7-year contract, and our unit is going to last at least 8 years. So we have first 3 years, that's going to be our payback period, and we have extra 5 years of profitability.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you talk a little more about the end user costs? You showed something like $13 per session and then 0 idling fees. Can you describe the cost structure a little?
Yep. So end users will be placed on market price, which is going to be competitive with other public charging networks. So we will normally charge people anywhere between 40 cents per kilowatt hour to maybe 50, 55. And that's what's going to generate our revenue. And we are not going to charge idle fee at this point, but still there's, as an early stage startup, there are quite a bit of things we need to figure out. So our goal is to really to find this sweet spot for charger performance and customers' experience. So sometimes we might want to charge idle fee after 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And also we want to take advantage of that period to recharge the battery a little bit so it is able to serve the next customer. All right, thank you so much.
Great, thanks so much. The next one that we have is Saad Youssefi from Batteryze. Sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Saad Youssefi, and I am the co-founder of Batteryze. We are a battery safety and battery circularity platform that looks at different or emerging e-mobility risks. So you'll realize, first, we've been incubated at LACI, so down here in LA, and then we're based out of the Bay Area. We also have done another incubator at InsurTech New York, so there is an insurance kind of angle that I'll discuss a little bit more closely. And then finally, we're backed by Plug and Play Ventures as well. But at its core, why I talk about battery testing or safety and why that's important is it has a big impact on e-mobility adoption. And more particularly, the application that we're focused on is how do we deal with post-crash electric vehicle risks? And so this is an emerging problem that because EV adoption hasn't really emerged or grew large enough, only folks are starting to realize the implications of not having the right diagnostic tools and not having the right kind of training and solutions in order to manage that. To give you some background, in the US, we have around 6 million accidents per year. of that, as EV adoption increases, we can estimate that a core part of that is going to be electric vehicle driven. But beyond post-crash, we also have issues around electric vehicles, such as hurricanes. So down in Florida, not too far back, we had all these electric vehicles that were idle and nobody wanted to touch them because of the risk of not knowing whether they have been damaged or not. So this is a big kind of problem because, number one, it is an emerging problem, and number two is, as more EV models go through, the complications and the complexity of having to build and understand how to deal with each one of those is going to significantly impact affordability. And so affordability also has implications around negative opinions associated with EV adoptions. In Korea last month, or 2 months ago, there was an underground EV-driven or caused fire that led to the Prime Minister and the President actually intervening and making sure that the public actually did not lose trust in electric vehicles altogether. In the US, from a cost perspective, one of those implications is also around warehousing. The current recommendations by the regulatory body is to warehouse electric vehicles 50 feet away from each other and not have them structured. So you can imagine that as more EVs are adopted, there's going to be a massive cost as well as warehousing challenges associated with that. So our solution is driven by a hardware testing, rapid, flexible solution. And so what it does is we look at productivity and we bring rapid testing at the battery pack in order to estimate and determine state of safety, but also remaining useful life. So remaining useful life then opens up the world of preventative maintenance, where it's not necessarily that it has been in an incident that we want to deal with that, but it also kind of opens up a much larger market that is not specific to post-crash. Our tech is not only hardware. We also have what we call a guided incident management, and this is meant for folks that are going to be engaging directly with the vehicle by creating checklists and by creating step-by-step based on that personalized model. How is it that the OEM recommends that you deal with that? So we do pull in a big database of all these different EV models and then in a very personal way explain how is it that you should deal with that given the recommendations. And the tech is coming from an initiative by NHTSA as well as the Department of Energy that was trying to imagine what would the equivalent of a smog test look like in the world of EVs. So what are the different tests that we should be implementing and what is it that we need to engage in? And my background prior to starting Batteryze is actually having worked on one of those tests that was included as part of those plethora of tests that the Department of Energy as well as the regulatory body recommended. And so we took a lot of those results that were done at a testing basis and then brought them into algorithms that are packed inside of a battery pack. And so I mentioned the guided incident management, which is meant for towing operators, for firefighters, for, let's say, other people that engage with post-crash, but then the same logic and application also is associated with other preventative maintenance. And so insurance is a big piece of this. So that's another reason why we did that insurance incubator, because a lot of our costs are embedded inside of auto insurance and then commercial auto applications. And our goal as a pre-seed company, we do have a product, which is what I showed you, but we are actually moving from our end goal, going from external testing into onboarded preventative smart maintenance. And that would be more in the form of sensors that can be onboarded inside of a smaller niche applications or even inside of a charging operator where you could actually do that in a seamless way and then get the data that you need. So this is the business plan. And then software licensing, hardware sales, as well as insurance-related revenue is something that we want to distribute on top of our platform. And no one is really engaging and thinking about this new emerging problem the way that we are. And then finally, our team is composed of energy, data science, and then hardware. John and Chris are folks that I worked with before when I talked about that prior test. And then Liz is helping from a sales and then business development. And then we have 3 interns also operating with us. And our goal, as I mentioned, is to look at it from an external testing application into the continuous, onboarded, seamless battery health data analytics solution that can help us really bring safety and then bring testing in a way that's convenient. Thank you. questions.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. So I'm guessing in the back end, like all existing EV manufacturers do this kind of work. So what differentiates you from those folks?
So when it comes to post-crash electric vehicle management, it tends to be auto repair shops or not necessarily EV shops, but the current way of testing an EV actually involves, it's very disruptive. It actually involves removing a battery, testing it, cycling it. We're actually bringing an onboarded, like seamless algorithmic-based testing, which streamlines the whole cost associated with moving it and logistics, but also leverages cutting-edge testing methods that are not currently done by OEMs.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Can you play out a scenario of a post-crash situation in terms of who is the operator that's running the diagnostic, and then once they make the analysis, what are the actions that follow?
Yeah. So the way that it would operate is you get to a site, there's a vehicle that has been crashed, you put in a VIN code, and then it actually pulls in and gives you recommended checklists of how to deal with that vehicle based on OEM recommended guidelines. And so you get that checklist. This would be a towing operator. A towing operator or a firefighter. These would be the two folks that are on site. You can break it down into we engage or we interface with on-site operators and then off-site. So off-site would be more of auto repair shops and then storage organizations, and then towing operators, firefighters would be the ones that are dealing with on-site. So you get that recommended checklist of how to engage with that, structural, visual, as well as like physical kind of evaluations. And then from there we have our testing kit that can be connected to an OBD port, and then rapidly in under 60 minutes is essentially what our characterization test takes. We'd come back with three kind of insights. Has it been damaged or not? And then what level of damage? So it's a binary yes or no, and then what level of damage, and that's where we open up into remaining life associated with that battery. And then you get a recommended pathway of, is this battery, should it be fully retired and there's no need for us to actually test it? Should it be dealt with differently versus trying to actually move it to a specialized shop that would test it and then tell you feedback? The current approach is to just retire them. So the current way, it's a big e-waste, which is why I talked about circularity being a big problem for us, is because the cost and time associated with doing that and specialized shop lack of them existing just has insurance just automatically consider that it has been damaged and not touch it.
What's the difference between the on-site remediation versus everything that can happen back at the shop? Like, what would a firefighter need to quickly triage to understand, and what does this technology help them do that they are not currently doing?
The big piece is making sure that it doesn't catch fire if it's transported from point A to point B. So that's the big piece that they're trying to manage from a risk perspective. And one way to do that is to figure out what level of charge the battery is at, and then minimize that so that you don't end up driving through an urban area and then it catches fire, despite it not looking like it was damaged. That's a big issue, because right now it could take up to 3 weeks after an incident for a battery to actually catch fire, while you have actually thought that there was no problems at all associated with that. So there's that risk element that folks are let's just retire it. There's no need to actually take this associated risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when I talked about offsite, another big area that is emerging, it's an emerging problem. So there isn't as much scale right now, is auto repair shops. Sorry, not auto repair shops, but like auction houses. So auction houses that are looking at auto parts can now actually command higher values if they can guarantee or provide some, characterization around the safety.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Saad. Last but not least, we have Nevoya with Sami Khan coming to the stage.
Hello. So I've recently found out, let me get my slides up. I've recently found out that the prize for this competition is a trip to the UK, which is where I live. So I'm still going to put my best foot forwards, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that potential bus trip in a few months' time. And I do actually want to say, both of those problems that these guys are solving are problems that we're seeing every day. So I'm so glad that people are out there also solving problems that we're seeing in the market and coming up with awesome solutions. So thanks, guys. So yeah, for me, my name is Sami. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nevoya, the zero-emissions trucking company. The $800 billion US trucking market is primed for disruption. Currently, trucks account for 7% of total greenhouse gas emissions in this country. In response to that, major shippers, the likes of Nestle and Amazon and PepsiCo, they're all searching for ways to reduce the carbon emissions from their trucking operations. According to McKinsey, this demand is expected to drive up the adoption of EVs within trucking to 40% by 2040. That's pretty nuts when you consider that today less than 0.002% of trucks on the road are electric. So that actually equates to a nearly 100% annual growth rate every single year for the next 15 years. So the question is, if this is such a huge opportunity, if there's so much momentum, why does the EV trucking market appear to be at a standstill? Why does adoption appear to be still so low? And the answer is, it actually isn't at a standstill. If you look across the value chain, from vehicle manufacturers to infrastructure providers to software providers, hundreds of billions of dollars are flowing in from public and private sources into the industry. However, there is one key exception, and that is the carriers themselves. The people who are actually responsible for bringing all of the innovation together from the OEMs, the infrastructure providers, and the software, and then getting that into the hands of customers and ultimately reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So why are these trucking companies not investing? If the customer demand is so high, and the market opportunity is so large, why aren't these companies piling into EVs? And the answer is the same reasons that incumbent vehicle manufacturers were not building EVs until Tesla came along. It's hard, and there's very little incentive to do it if none of your competitors are doing it. Today's diesel carriers have tens of thousands of diesel assets. They've got hundreds of thousands of staff who have never known anything but diesel. And all of their assets and all of their operations are completely built around diesel. In addition to that, a lot of their operations are long haul, because that's a really efficient operation to run when you've got diesel trucks. You find the longest route you can, and you put a truck between those two destinations, and you guarantee yourself really high levels of utilization. And then finally, the economics of it. The truth is that electric trucks cost a hell of a lot more than diesel trucks. And when they see these high upfront costs, carriers say, no thanks, I'm not going to deal with that CapEx. So what did we decide to do? We decided to build a new type of trucking company, one that was built from scratch around EVs rather than adapted towards them. We decided to focus on the areas of the market where EVs actually make sense today, and that is short-haul routes, that is port drayage, that is intermodal. And 50% of the routes that currently exist in the United States are those short-haul routes, below 250 miles, perfect for electric vehicles. So you're still opening up a huge, huge market opportunity to serve, even if you don't focus on those long-haul opportunities. And then the final thing that we're doing is we're using tech and infrastructure, as I'll come on to actually optimize our operations and run more and more miles with these EVs, such that as we incur more miles and more variable costs, we actually bring the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle in line with diesel. And then we can go out to our customers and give them zero emissions miles at a cost that is competitive with diesel. The two pillars to this strategy are tech and infrastructure. Our bespoke technology platform, built specifically for heavy-duty EVs, allows us to accurately predict the range of our vehicles based on their current duty cycle, optimizes charging locations to reduce the price, and maximizes the utilization of our fleet by intelligently dispatching our trucks and bidding on loads. We're also developing our own infrastructure. Why? Because that is key to reducing the costs and driving down that fuel cost. In terms of where we're at today, our EV capacity has allowed us to, that number is actually out of date. We're now partnering with 8 of the Fortune 500 within 2 months of running our first trucks. That truck number is also out of date. We've got 6 trucks on the road. A further 10 are being delivered later this year, and we've got 20 that are being delivered next year, of which 80% is paid for by our friends at CARB. Those shippers and those brokers are just some of the names we're either negotiating with or currently hauling freight with. We're growing revenues at about 20% week on week at the moment, and expect to be at over $1 million of ACV by the end of this year. There's a short slide on team, which I won't go into in too much detail, but we've got a variety of experience across EVs, for myself, my time at McLaren, optimization software from Tom, my co-founder, who worked at Project 44, and then trucking and commercialization of trucking from JV, who was head of commercial at Waymo's trucking division. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And so remind me, you are all providing the software and you're also providing the trucks?
So we're a full service carrier. So when we looked at this market, we spoke to the shippers, and what we realized is they don't need a new hassle. They don't want a new hassle. What they want is someone to come in and say, today you'll have a diesel truck and a diesel carrier doing that load with JB Hunt or Knight Swift or whoever. Tomorrow we will do that load and nothing else changes for you. Aside from the fact that you can reduce your carbon emissions, we've got the drivers, we've got the software, we charge the vehicles, we make sure they turn up at your depot at the right time, and we act like any other trucking company. And the reason that we've done that is because that is what customers want. They don't want an extra bit of software that they have to plug in. They don't want a truck where they then have to find the driver and add it to their operations. They want something to just replace their existing diesel carrier and make it as easy as possible.
And just out of curiosity, for your sort of optimal, what does your scaling model look like? I mean, what's your sort of ideal number of units that you're deploying?
So the way that we look at scale is in individual markets. So LA is our first market. And at the moment, we've got, as I said, 35 vehicles in total on order. There are 35,000 vehicles just doing drayage in LA. So the way that we deploy is within specific markets, building up scale, and then deploying to new markets. So we look at scale as anything above 100 trucks, because that's kind of the scale at which the infrastructure starts to make sense. And then we look to the new market. So our next market is going to be Houston, where we're going to do something very similar, but with no government funding, which just shows that these vehicles can actually stand on their own 2 feet without needing subsidies.
And I'm sorry, remember one last time for the infrastructure. How are you sort of are you facilitators in the infrastructure space?
So what we do is we use third-party infrastructure to begin with in order to accelerate and get out to customers quickly. And then over time, we vertically integrate that. So once we've got 100 trucks on the road in a location, then we go to an infrastructure provider and say, hey, will you help us build a charging station so that we can go from paying 40 cents per kilowatt hour to 10 cents? And it's additional margin for us, and we can then pay them some of that margin in interest payments.
Thank you.
Quick question. Where are your vehicles coming from right now when you're making the transition for your clients?
So we're using solely Freightliners at the moment. The reason for that is that Freightliners are the only vehicle we've come across that can haul a full load of 45,000 pounds. And the customers that we're serving have, fizzy drinks, they have water bottles. And so for them, that full load is really, really important. Over time, we're going to have a mixed fleet where we've got some vehicles that do lighter loads, but they can do further range. So like the Nikola or a Volvo or something like that.
And so the diesel trucking company right now, well, they wouldn't go to Soleil directly because they're not giving them the entire package of services. They would just sell them a vehicle. I'm just trying to understand the differentiator. When you're bringing in the truck, you're bringing in the service, you're helping them transition from diesel. What is the trucking company doing differently?
So
independently.
We're competing with these trucking companies. So the reality is these trucking companies just aren't interested in electric. So we are the trucking company, and if there is a trucking company, doing a specific route in, say Rialto to the port, we'll come along and we'll say, hey, we'll do that same route. We'll charge the same amount as the diesel trucking company, but when you do your emissions accounting at the end of the year, you can say 0 for that particular route. And that's a pretty strong sell.
Thank you.
No problem.
Question or judge question?
So curious about the future build-out of the company. Do you intend to just stay as an alternative trucking company, or at some point, do you see the legacy fleets hitting a want to come to you and say, help us do what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be honest, we're keeping our mind open here. If I'm honest, I want to follow the Tesla model. I want to be the largest trucking company in the US because I think these guys are asleep at the wheel, and I think there is such a huge opportunity in terms of market share.
But even Tesla is now going to lease out their infrastructure.
Exactly. And the advantage we have here on the infrastructure and on the software side is we develop these things for ourselves. So any additional monetization is 100% margin. So if someone comes in and says, hey, can I use your infrastructure during the daytime? Sure you can, because we're not using it, so we're just going to get free money out of that. Same with the software. So it's definitely part of the long-term plan, but we're very, very focused on the trucking side of the operation today.
If you're as plug and play with existing carriers, how do you maintain stickiness with the customers when the big guys come in and try to undercut you with their
Price.
infrastructure?
That's so the way that we have to do that is through the software and through the infrastructure. Because once you've got that infrastructure set up near a customer and you've got the software that's intelligently routing your vehicles, even if someone tries to come in and tries to take that business from you, they would have to have their own infrastructure and competing software, which not only is going to take them many, many years, it's also going to cost them a lot of money. And the way that we anticipate this market is going to go is there's going to be a huge first mover advantage in specific lanes. So what you want to do is you want to go and win the high value lanes. That's why we're starting in LA. And then when other companies see the success of Nevoya, they'll say, let's go and do that, but we're not going to compete with them on their own turf because we're just going to drive down margin. Let's take that playbook and do it somewhere else that's not quite as attractive. And then, coming back to your point, we can then sell them the software and the ability to do that. Because the reality is we can't decarbonize every single lane in the US. So actually that just becomes another opportunity for monetization. Thank you, everyone.